All right, so this is going to be the video that I told you I would be posting dealing with argumentation as part of your preparation for the exam that's coming up on Monday. So this is meant to complement the material that we covered in class, where we went over the detail, the structure, that for a 5-paragraph academic essay, thesis statement, topic sentence, etc. So that should be something you're familiar with. You want to review it. And what we're going to cover today is what is argumentation and how do you present an argument, right? Remember, this relates directly to your thesis statement. Your thesis statement is meant to be in a form of an argument, engaging in an argument, not a combative argument where you are making an argument, you are taking a position, and you are out to prove the validity of the position you are taking vis-a-vis the question that you are addressing regarding whichever short story you're writing on, okay? And we're going to look at some techniques that you can use to present your argument. Let's talk about the need. Always remember the necessity of substantiating your claims with evidence from the text. Right? Whatever conclusions you draw, whatever aspects of the argument you make, you must demonstrate that you have come to those understandings through evidence that is contained in the text. Close reading, critical thinking. That's what this is about. Okay? So I'm going to go through this PowerPoint with you. I've already posted this PowerPoint. Again, your best approach in preparing for the exam is to look over these documents, be familiar with these documents, and most importantly, try to reread the stories, especially now with this material absorbed into your understanding, okay? I'll try to keep this reasonably short. Okay, so introduction to argumentation. So, slower here. One of the things we have to talk about is the difference between persuasion and argument. Now, every argument does have an element of persuasion in it. But your argument, and what makes it different than pure persuasion, is the argument is rooted in a balanced approach. Persuasion will often, we see this in politics, right? Persuasion will often ignore anything that is disagreeable to what you're trying to persuade your audience to believe or how you're trying to persuade them to act. All right? It's not necessarily balanced. You are looking for a balanced, objective, rational, logical approach to making your argument. Right? Remember, anticipating objections to your argument, understanding oppositional positions vis-a-vis your argument. And you determine all that through the process of thinking, critical reading, critical thinking. They're often used interchangeably, but persuasion is this broad term. All right. Again, there is an element of persuasion in an argument, but it's not purely persuasive. You want your audience to come and understand your argument through the evidence you are presenting. You don't want them just to believe you because you say so. You are proving it. So argument, as it says here, is a specific kind of persuasion based on the principles of logic and reasoning. That's the key. Right? You can see it here as in opposition or as, in a sense, a type of complement in a way to persuasion. But persuasion can take tactics that are not acceptable in an academic milieu. Importance of argument and persuasion. Well, again, why should you be studying this other than just so you're prepared for your exam? Well, because in everyday life, all these things, I'm not going to read everything to here. You can read yourselves, right? But you're engaging in forms of argumentation and persuasion every day, right? Whether you're negotiating the price of a new car, defending your ideas in an academic milieu, getting people to cooperate with you, certainly when you're writing, making your point, and reading and listening. It really is something, if you think about it, we're engaged in at all times to some degree or another. Argument involves the process of establishing a claim. You've heard me use that word many times, and then proving it with the use of examples. Sometimes research. You're not asked to do research here. As a matter of fact, you shouldn't be thinking of any kind of research. This is all about you engaging in logical reasoning and using examples. The essential ingredients. Remember, this is also related to how you establish your thesis statement. The issue, as I mentioned to you about the thesis statement, same thing, is open to debate. It's argumentative because people can disagree. Even if they disagree, it doesn't mean that your argument is invalid. They may be able to say that, well, I will make my argument for this interpretation. I think it has greater impact. Doesn't mean that yours doesn't have an impact. Remember, when we're dealing with literature and art in general, there's a lot of ambiguity. There is no one means of interpretation. Right? It's not math. It's not 2 + 2 is 4. You're taking a position on a specific issue. In this case, the issue related to the story you're writing on. You're going to give your reasons for taking that position. And you're going to be giving evidence to support your reason. Okay? And you can use a variety of different means, but in our case, the evidence in our particular case is from the text. Evidence from the text. Please do not forget that. That's why you're allowed to have your books. So you can use direct quotes, paraphrasing, and so on. Showing where you found evidence that lends itself to what you are claiming. Remember, you are always meant to be aware of who your audience is. Understanding your audience is key to effective writing of all kinds. This isn't just for this class. This isn't everything you do. Know your audience. Know who you are addressing. You are engaging in an exchange with your audience, right? You have to be thinking about this as a form of communication. And yes, be attentive to the possibility that your reader will not agree with you. Anticipate that I'm going to be skeptical. Oh, really? That's what you think? Prove it. Show me. Show me. Don't just tell me. Show me. I need evidence. That's essential. Audience awareness to persuasion are. Therefore, know your audience. You may not know what or your audience's position is on the issue. If you do, great. You may not. How strongly feel. This is something, again, it applies. This is a general discussion PowerPoint on argumentation. Okay? You do want to certainly accept your audience, in this case, as being open-minded and will consider other views. Absolutely. Even if I disagree with you, that is not mean I don't want to hear what you have to say. And if you prove it and I still disagree with you, that is not going to impact your grade. It's not going to impact the power of your argument. But always anticipate objections. We have something that we call the rhetorical triangle. I think I've mentioned these terms to you, and I'm not going to go into great depth here with what we mean by pathos, ethos, and logos. Okay? We're going to look at these in a little more detail in a minute. You see how the pathos is directed at the audience. The ethos is the speaker. You're the speaker. And logos, kind of logic, is how you are relaying your message. So, in more detail, pathos, logos, and ethos comes from Aristotle and his ideas regarding rhetoric. That's what we're talking about here, forms of rhetoric. Pathos is an emotional appeal. It's meant specifically to stir strong emotions, feelings in your audience. You will not be engaging in the use of pathos to any great degree. It's something we see in advertising. It's something we see in politics. And it's usually something that is used much more readily when you are engaged in pure persuasion. You need to vote for me, and I'm going to try every means I can to have you vote for me, and then I'm going to appeal to your emotions. I'm going to make you fear the other, or things like that. All right? There can be elements of it depending on the subject that you're writing on, but for the most part, in an analytic, academic, 5-paragraph structured essay analyzing a story, there will be little use of pathos. Logos, on the other hand, is logical appeal. This you will be engaging in. You want to always be sure that your argument is logical. It makes sense. Constructs a message of a well-reasoned argument. And it's something you want to check and you want to be attentive to when you are doing an outline before you start writing. Does it make sense to you? Is it convincing, or is it really outlandish? If it's really outlandish, better think again. Now, ethos, it's loosely called an ethical appeal. It establishes more than anything else credibility. The credibility of the speaker. The speaker is you. You need to establish your credibility. Right? So we're always looking for people's credibility, their ethos. If we're going to go and see a doctor, we want to be sure they're a doctor. We want to have our garage fixed. We want to be sure that the person fixing it is credible. So we would look at things like, do they have a business? Have they been trained in garage repair? Rather than just randomly taking someone in there who says they can do it without there being evidence that they can. When it comes to establishing your own credibility, right? I mean, my ethos, if you will, as a teacher at Taft College is, okay, I'm working on my PhD, I finished my master's, I finished an undergraduate degree, and I've been teaching for many years. All these things are means by which I establish my ethos that gives me credibility to do what I'm doing. You are at a stage where you haven't yet achieved that, for the most part. So how do you establish your credibility? Demonstrate to your audience that you are someone to be taken seriously in your analysis of this text. Well, you're limited at this stage of your careers, but the best way to do that is through your writing. The better you write, the more you establish your credibility. If you're in any position, whether it's at work or whether it's at school, if your writing is poor, then your ethos is impacted in a negative way. People are going to go, well, okay, they don't write well, so how can I really trust them? Right? It's all about improving. But that's why we put so much importance at this stage on your writing. How do you establish pathos? In a variety of different ways, through the diction, the words that are being used. The pathos, remember this is about emotions. is often using figurative language. Remember, we talked about the difference between figurative and literal. We see a lot of pathos in short stories and creative writing, right? If it's making you feel emotional, and certainly a big part of many of the stories we've read, that is a creative writer engaging in a type of pathos to elicit those types of emotions from you. And they often do that through figurative language, such as personification, metaphor, and so on. For this class, you're not creative writers. You're not going to be using figurative language. This is what I meant earlier, that you're not going to engage in much pathos here. Okay, carefully crafted syntax, sentence structure, that goes for everything. Another way you can identify or engage in pathos is using personal anecdotes. No, not when you're writing an academic essay. You are not to include personal experiences or personal stories. You are to be talking in an analytic way about the text. This is, again, why you won't be engaging in much pathos, but you will be recognizing pathos in the stories that you read. Logos, facts, statistics, research, referring to experts, cause and effect. Logic, rational logic. You use facts. You use specific examples from the text that relate to the argument, which is done in a manner so that it makes sense. You will be engaging mainly in the use of logos in your essays. Okay? Logic of your, and of course, as you would in any field, you need the data to substantiate your claims and to enhance the logic of your argument. Back to using examples. Okay. Ethos, how do you identify? It's again, the credibility, stating qualifications for expertise. It's a doctor. He has a PhD. He has 25 years experience fixing garages. In your case, it's mainly the quality of your writing and your ability to cite relevant authorities if you were doing research. You're not doing research here. Okay? It is, though, related to choosing the quotes that you use from the text. Make sure that they're appropriate. And I really want to stress that. Don't just throw a quote there because, as I said, you want to include 1 or 2 quotes at least in each paragraph. Okay? But don't just throw something in there willy-nilly. It has to have a direct correlation to what it is you are discussing in that paragraph. And that, if you do that well, that establishes your credibility. Facts and opinions. Be careful with this one. Fact is a specific detail that can be proven as true based on objective evidence. A fact is a fact is a fact is a fact. There are no alternative facts out there. A fact is a fact. There are alternative interpretations of facts, but a fact is a fact is a fact. An opinion, well, it can be a feeling, judgment, a belief. In my opinion, Inter Milan is the greatest soccer team in the world. But in order to have that opinion transition into an objective analysis regarding what is the best soccer team in the world, I need objective proof. I'd look at statistics, how many Champions League games won, how many Scudettos have they won, and so on. And if that proof, if that evidence, if that data does not substantiate my opinion, then my opinion just remains that an opinion. We're not here about opinions. We're here about establishing a logical analysis. Opinion can be a conclusion that cannot be proven true by objective evidence. I don't want to see that. I'm not interested in your opinions. I'm interested in what you can prove. Please, please keep that in mind. And you must be attentive to separating fact from opinion. Fact, spinach is a source of iron. This is a fact. There's iron in spinach. Opinion is spinach tastes awful. Certain opinions, such as this one, you're never going to make it anything more than an opinion because it's subjective. Right? We all deal in a certain level with a certain level of subjectivity. But in an academic milieu, when we're doing these types of essays and so on, we want to really root it in as much objectivity as possible. We must ensure that it moves away from being just an opinion. Some people have an opinion that it tastes great. You can't refute those, right? It's an opinion. It has really very little place in academic writing. Facts and opinion. Again, fact, it's objective, it states reality. It, most importantly, perhaps can be verified. We can verify that there is iron in spinach. And it's presented with unbiased words, objective words, not your own personal feelings about it and your own biases. Whereas an opinion is subjective. It's an interpretation of reality that cannot be verified. And it's usually, and this is where you be careful, with presented with value words. Okay? You don't want to use the value words. You want your audience to come to the conclusions of the value of your interpretation. Demonstrate how it is valuable. Don't use those value words. Tastes awful. Don't say, I didn't like this story. That's your opinion. I don't care about your opinion. If you think it's a bad story, if you think it's a poorly written story, prove it. It's nothing to do whether you liked it or not. Questions to identify facts. Can the statement be proved or demonstrated to be true? You can't prove that it tastes awful. Again, other people say it tastes great. I love spinach. Can the statement be observed in practice or operation? Not in a logical argument. Can it be verified by witness, manuscripts, document, or examples from the text? If it can't, you can point out that a character in a story thinks that spinach tastes awful. That's not the same thing as saying spinach tastes awful. The story presents the notion that spinach tastes awful. We see this in the following example when so-and-so says it tastes awful. That's an analysis of the story. It's not your personal opinion. This is basic questions to ask in defining a problem. Okay, if you're addressing a problem, that could very much be incorporated into the thesis statement, if that's a way that you choose to approach it. And it's the basics: who, what, where, when, why, and how. You can read over this. You've seen this before. Okay, this is the way that you evaluate things. It's very specific to a problem, so it's not that focused on what we're doing, per se. The language of argument, an opinion, as I said earlier, is something that you have. It is a judgment predicated on personal beliefs. Okay, that's not what we're dealing with here. That's an opinion. Opinions don't always have basis. These are often referred to as prejudices. Right? You have a prejudice against the taste of spinach. Arguments are a form of discourse and must be built through logical reasoning supported by evidence. You're going to see this popping up all the time. I cannot say it enough. I've been doing this a long time, and the number of times I'm having opinions in academic essays instead of arguments is shocking to me. That's why I emphasize it to the extent that I do. What do we mean by discourse? It's a formal treatment of a subject communicating key ideas or information. Formal argument states a proposition, develops that proposition with the premises, and based on the connection of the premises comes to a conclusion. This is standard logic. Proposition would be, what are you trying to prove? The premise, statements of reason used to support a conclusion. You see how this ties in with what we're talking about. Draw your conclusion based on your initial proposition. Then show your reasons for having that proposition, prove that proposition, evidence to substantiate it, and then you can draw the conclusions based on the reasoning and the evidence that you've presented. Formal arguments are constructed through this logical reasoning. There's inductive reasoning. I don't get you bogged down too much in this. Okay. When I teach certain courses, we spend a lot of time on inductive versus deductive reasoning. At this stage, you know if it's a rational argument, if it's logical, if it makes sense. That's what you want to first and foremost understand. If you're familiar with these terms, you can employ them in any manner that you wish. Basically, inductive is going from specific examples to general conclusions. Deductive is from specific conclusions inferred from general premises. Again, I'm not going to get us bogged down in some of the terminology. This is a PowerPoint that I've used for a number of different classes, many of which are dealing with our classes on specifically rhetoric. But it's giving you a general idea of how you formulate your argument. Okay? Logical reasoning is supported by evidence, facts. Authorities, yes, if you're drawing on other sources, you would have to ensure that the authorities are proper. In your case, the primary sources is where you're looking for your evidence. The primary source is the text that you are analyzing. Don't look elsewhere. Don't tell me what other people think about it. This isn't a research course. It needs to be your assessment. Please don't forget that. I will notice immediately if you are drawing on other source material. That's not what this course is about. I think I've made that clear. It's about your ability to draw your own conclusions, your own understanding, not what other people have said about the story. You can use statistics, personal experience. We talked about this. No. Okay, I mean, yes, statistics, that's basically the statistics is what you take directly from the text. Do not engage in this personal experience. That's not what this is about. You may have assignments and even English classes where you will be asked to draw on your personal experience. Not here. Oh, yeah, so to be attentive to fallacies. This is a tricky one. I'm going to go through this very quickly. Don't worry. I mean, it's the reason I presented it all is so that you are a little more able to recognize when you are drifting away from logic, and if you fall into using logical fallacies. Right? So a fallacy is if there's a lapse in logical reasoning. Okay? There are three major types of fallacy. Just because some people doesn't mean all. This really involves generalities. And I've talked about this, and I'll remind you, you want to avoid generalities, making broad, general, or judgmental statements. Okay? Everyone knows this. No, it's very few things that everyone knows. Okay? Don't make statements like that. Pick up on them when you're doing your revisions. Rephrase it. Many people do. You can even go, most people do, if it's something, you know, that lends itself to that. But avoid these broad generalizations, and remember the fallacy. Just because you can say that some people do this doesn't mean everyone does. Okay? Insufficient evidence. You have to be sure that the evidence you're using is sufficient to prove your point. This comes back to choosing your quotes, choosing the evidence from the text carefully, and make sure it has a direct bearing and relationship to what it is you are saying in that paragraph. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a paragraph, an argument being made, and then there's a quote, and I'm going, I can't figure out how this quote lends itself to your argument. Be sure that you explain how that quote relates to your argument. And just because there's a correlation between two things, it does not explain necessarily the cause. Don't worry, don't get bogged down in this. Right? Again, I don't want to overwhelm. Okay? These are the ones that you want to be most attentive to. All right. Now, the last part of this is dealing with fallacies in a little more detail. You can look it over. I mean, it's really interesting stuff. I teach the course on rhetoric. I spend 2-3 weeks discussing logical fallacies. All right. These are really for if you're taking a course on rhetoric where you can actually have the terminology that's used to explain what that fallacy is, right? Begging the question, or red herring, and all this stuff. What you do, if you do look over this section, pay more attention to what's here. Okay? So yes, a red herring is when the writer introduces an irrelevant point to divert the reader's attention from the main issue. Okay? But you can see, without knowing that it's called a red herring, if a writer is introducing an irrelevant point, if you introduce an irrelevant point, that's a problem. Begging the question, if you're presenting as truth what is supposed to be proven by the argument. This is an important one insofar as you are out to prove it. It's not established as truth at that point. You are out to prove that you think this is the truth of how you are responding, or whatever the specifics are of the text that you're analyzing. Okay? But if you start off by presenting it as a truth before you've proven it to be a truth, that's a logical fallacy. It's coming before you've proven it. It makes saying it's a truth before the fact is, well, it's called a logical fallacy because, again, the purpose of what you are endeavoring to do is to prove it. So it can't be there until it's proven to be there. Okay. Again, I don't want to get too bogged down in this. It gets very technical. When is an argument a good one? A cogent or good argument is an argument in which the premises are rationally acceptable and provide rational support for the conclusion. Right? This is all just other ways of basically coming down to the fundamental, foundational issue of using logic and reason and evidence from the text to make an argument. Okay? That your premises are acceptable. It's reasonable for us to accept it. If you come out with some outlandish premise, that's going to undercut your whole argument. You shouldn't have an issue with that because I will be directing you through the prompt, through the question. And you've also become quite familiar with stories. Premises are relevant to the conclusion. There has to be a proper correlation, relevancy between the evidence and the statements you're making as they relate to the conclusions that you draw. Therefore, as we can see from the evidence presented, where you come and restate your thesis statement, but now you've proven it. So now you can say, now this is what it is. It again comes back to what I was saying and discussing in terms of how you word things in your conclusion after your evidence has been presented. Okay. Yeah, this ARG stuff, we're going to skip that for now. It's acceptable premise, relevant premise. And I, again, if you're finding anything that I'm touching on here in the latter half of this video with these last few slides, they're not the most important elements of what I'm discussing here today in terms of what you are being asked to do. So ignore them if you're at all troubled by them. Okay, you want to ultimately just come back to this. You have an introduction where you have your thesis statement. Background information is, again, more in terms of what's in the text, what you are using from the text. You use reasons and evidence from the text. Often you are anticipating opposing views. That's what makes it argumentative. You want to anticipate that so that it gives more veracity to your argument by, if need be, addressing that this could be seen as this, but this is why this I would argue more that it should be seen like this because of its relationship to this that was in the previous paragraph and so on. It's all part of putting together your argument and drawing your conclusions. All right. Again, don't get evaluate the opposing points of views. Don't again. It's worded in such a way, again, for a class on rhetoric. For our intents and purposes, it's just anticipating, okay, and acknowledging that there are other possible interpretations. You are out to show that yours is the most, for you, based on the way that you're doing the reading and your interpretation, is what you are demonstrating is the one that is most probable based on the way that you are presenting the argument. Okay. Again, we're dealing with literature here. So there's many different ways of entering into the discussion that you are going to be having, because you are entering into a discussion. Okay, so that's it. I mean, Zoom environment and so on, and I'm hoping that that's not too much information, but the bottom line is, most importantly, what we went over in class regarding the structure and about developing that thesis statement. And that thesis statement must be, as we looked at with the documents that we had up at class, it must be argumentative. Right? That's why I went over this material with you. Again, be sure that you take the time to reread the stories. If you have any questions or concerns, reach out to me. Remember as well that you must have working camera, working microphone. Your camera is going to be on the entire time. Your microphone is going to be on the entire time, and you will be sharing your screens with me. Okay, you'll be hitting screen share. I can set up so everyone can share the screen. You won't be seeing anyone else's screen. I will be able to see everyone's screen. Okay, if you can, and if any of those things aren't operational, especially the camera and the microphone, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the exam. So be sure that you have double checked that that's all working. And if there's any issues, get in touch with me and we'll make other arrangements. Okay, we will see you all on Monday. All right.